You are listening to the Marc Guzman Podcast Experience. Before we get started, just a reminder that you can find all of my available rental properties on my website at marcguzman.com. If you own investment property, click on the Owner Services section to see our complete list of services. Today, we'll be sampling the Gold IPA provided by our sponsor, East Brother Beer Company. Located on Canal Boulevard in Point Richmond, East Brother Beer Company mixes the classic style of old with the precision and sensibility of the modern day to create the perfect beer experience. Step right up, folks. The fun is about to begin. Once upon a time, those are the words that carnival barkers would yell to drum up excitement for the arrival of the circus or carnival. Today, though, as those old styles of entertainment fade away, their brilliant and colorful history has come to be immortalized in El Cerritos' Playland Not at the Beach. A museum unlike any other, it offers attendees an expansive set of retro and throwback arcade and carnival attractions, along with some magic shows. Today, our guest is Frank Biafore, the fabulous Frank, who runs and operates Playland Not at the Beach, a.k.a. the happiest place on Eartha, to talk to us about his own slice of joy and wonderment located right here in the East Bay. Well, cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers to you too.
Welcome, Frank, onto the podcast. And have you tried East Brother Beer before?
I have not.
Okay, they're actually located in Richmond. Right by Point, actually, it is Point Richmond on Canal Boulevard, in that area over there. Are you familiar with Point Richmond?
I'm familiar with it, and I think I have been there once to drop something off. I don't remember what it was, but yeah, kind of a funky little building, lots of open space. It's around the back.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, I was there for something, but I'm not going to remember what it was for.
Yeah, no, their beer is phenomenal. So we're having their... Let's see. It's one of their IPAs. It's a gold IPA we're trying here. And enjoy.
Cool. Thank you.
So, Playland Not at the Beach, located in El Cerrito. You currently own that?
We're a 501c3 nonprofit.
Okay.
But I am currently the basically COO, and I've given myself the title of Fabulous Fun Facilitator. It's great when you can pick your own job title, but basically I and my husband Tim and a couple people on our board are the key people operating it, and then we have a core base of volunteers that really is our lifeblood and what helps keep us going.
Okay. And Fabulous Frank. So when did you decide to become a magician?
Who said I wanted to become a magician? That's actually, when I saw the question you sent me, that's kind of funny because really I did not want to become a magician.
Okay.
Most magicians have this fabulous story about when I was a child. I was 5. My uncle gave me a magic kit. I fell in love with it. When I was a kid, I hated magic because I was a kid who had to shop in the Husky section of the clothing stores. Every Christmas, we'd go to an Elks Club Christmas party. The magician always needed a kid in a sport coat. And guess who the only kid in a sport coat was? So year after year, I got dragged up on stage. And I really didn't like being in front of people. And I ended up starting off being kind of a not-so-lovely assistant for Richard, who we'll talk about later. And I transitioned from being the lovely assistant to doing the magic. And while I didn't like the magic when I was a kid, I'm so grateful for those experiences because I actually looked up the guy's name recently to give him some credit and stuff. And his name was Tom Preet. He was an older guy back in Connecticut where I was raised. And if it weren't for those experiences, I wouldn't have my magician story. And it's pretty cool. That's not the usual magician story of falling in love with magic when I was a kid. So I started magic really when I was about 30.
So you were dragged into it?
I was kind of dragged into it. In fact, it was kind of funny because when I started doing it, at our home, we have a magic stage and a small theater. And Richard used to say, help me up here. Richard never wanted to perform in public. So it was just going to be something at our home. And it transitioned to where I now do, when we're open, about 12 shows a week. and it's just kind of taken on a life of its own, and I really enjoy it now.
So what are your favorite tricks?
I don't have a lot of favorite tricks per se. Some of my favorite tricks are the more organic ones, the simpler things like, making coins move from place to place or objects, or the tricks or illusions that make the kids smile and giggle. And it's kind of amusing because a lot of magicians will perform for months and months to perfect tricks so they can impress other magicians. And some of the biggest throwaway tricks, like making, 4-colored hankies appear. You could have just done a trick for the kids that you took months to practice and they're bored, and you pull out 3-colored hankies made supposedly from nowhere, and the kids are amazed. It's like, oh, that's real magic. And so those are my favorite kind of tricks.
Okay.
Kind of the simpler, the ones that bring the kids and the people most joy.
Now, how easy or hard is it to learn a lot of different magic tricks?
Depends on the tricks and illusions themselves. Some of them are very easy and can be purchased kind of over the counter and take a little bit of time to practice.
Like in those kit sets?
Like in the kit sets, or, with a deck of cards, you could do hundreds, if not thousands, of different tricks and illusions.
And I see you have a deck of cards there.
I had a deck of cards here, just because I didn't want to, get caught with asking for a trick or something and saying I didn't have anything with me.
So we'll have to see a trick later then.
We could probably do that.
So what are some of your favorite magicians? So being dragged into it and really learning magic, I'm sure at some point you really looked up to certain magicians and I'm sure aspired to be a few of them or do some of their tricks. So who were those people?
Yeah. I enjoy Penn and Teller a lot, primarily because they push the envelope quite a bit. And they also, a lot of times, I think, start doing a trick or an illusion where you're going to be under the impression you've seen it before and it takes a sudden left turn and goes somewhere you're totally not expecting. I loved the magic of Doug Henning. He had kind of just a purity and a way of appealing to kids and people with very family-friendly shows. I also really like the great Thompsoni and Company. It's a husband and wife team out of Las Vegas, Johnny Thompson and his wife Pamela Hayes. And they basically, I think he bills himself as the world's greatest Polish magician.
World's greatest Polish magician.
Yeah, and it's part real magic and part kind of playing roles. But frequently, Pamela gives away, like some of the illusions, like she'll go to take it away and accidentally opens it or twists it away she shouldn't, supposedly. Okay. And you get to see what happened. Or she comes out chewing gum, and he'll take the gum away from her, and then he'll look for some place to put it. And he'll put back his lapel, and there's like a dozen pieces there already. He'll just stick out on the lapel and keep going. But it's a fun blend of kind of like vaudevillian magic and actual magic illusions.
Now, when performing magic, I mean, what's your ideal audience? Is it adults or is it children?
Pretty much a mixture of kids and adults. A lot of magic is designed for either just kids or just adults. And we get a nice blend of people at Playland, of kids and adults. So some of it I do is very simple, colorful, quick changing things. And then some of it is geared a little more to the adults. I happen to enjoy really bad humor and puns. In fact, we were recently in Oakland Magazine, his best throwback arcade. And they said something about the dad joke wielding magician, which was like the biggest honor. And so, like while I'm doing illusions or tricks for the kids, I'll throw in some lines for the adults. Like I'll talk about this trick I used to do, but I made a really big mistake when I started. And the kids always looked at me like I was lost in space. And the kid has no clue what the line means, but the parents kind of chuckle. And I'll just get down and say, if you look at all of the older people in the audience, they can explain that to you after. So, it's a little like a Disney movie where the kids don't have to get everything in it. But there's a little for the kids, there's a little for the grown-ups. Because I realized that the people aren't there to really see me as a magician. They're there with their families to have fun. And nothing makes me feel better than getting some of the kids up there and afterwards having the adults come up and say, you know, I'm amazed you got Tommy to come up here on stage because he's never done that before. And it was so great to see, you know, him come out of his shell and go up there and be willing to do that with you.
Yeah.
So that's some of the really special parts of the magic.
Well, I think, I think magic is, in its own way, very magical for a lot of people because it's the unknown. People don't know how a trick was just done, especially if it's something, you know, that you feel you should have caught it, but you didn't catch it. And now you're just wondering how they did that. And yeah, and I would imagine for a lot of little kids, just like amazing. I mean, I remember how it was. I mean, you really think that this person pulled some kind of magic, you know, out of somewhere. But I mean, it's pretty interesting. Now, Playland, how long has that been around?
We were in the works about 8 years, and this May we'll be celebrating our 10th anniversary. So it was about 18 years ago that the seeds of Playland kind of came together and started forming.
Now, has it always been in El Cerrito?
Yes. Yeah, a lot of people ask how long we've been there, when did we move, because they confuse us with the Musée Mécanique that used to be under the Cliff House.
Okay.
And that's now out at Pier 45. And they're some friends of ours, but we've never been part of the same company. We have some of the things in the same spirit as what they have, but we also have, you know, birthday parties. We have a couple evenings a month that are grown-up only nights. So it's a little different than that.
Okay, now Playland not at the beach. I like the name because it sounds like an amusement park, but it's not really an amusement park. It's, well, kind of, right?
It's basically a combination of family fun center and museum. So we have a lot of artifacts from Playland, Cerritos, other amusement parks, but about 90% of it is there to be played and enjoyed. So there's carnival games, there's arcade games, there's 30 pinball machines, there's the magic shows, there's the parties and things we host. But then there's also artifacts and authentic things from Playland and the parks, like one of the Laughing Sal's, like some of the old games, some of the old signage. So you learn, but you also have fun.
Mm-hmm. And who designed that entire interior? Who put that together?
Richard was the creative force and founder behind a lot of it. When we were putting it together, it was very much a labor of love. And we didn't really have an end goal of what we wanted to see. So it is a very eclectic maze of hallways and rooms and exhibits and things like that. So there was no master plan of we should have, you know, like the party rooms here and this and that there. And because of that, we have a couple challenges. Like our party rooms, there are frequently people passing through there the whole day. So we call them semi-private because people get to use them, but there's always people going through there. And the reality is, you know, most of the time you're only going to spend 10 or 15 minutes in your party room because you're going to be out playing the games, going to the magic show, doing a treasure hunt, having fun.
Now, what are some examples of the classic machines and arcade games that you have there?
One of the coolest things we have there is a game called Fascination. It's basically bingo that you would play against other people. There were fascination parlors at Playland, at the Sutro Baths, on Market Street, on Geneva in San Francisco. And we got those tables kind of by accident. Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk had to get rid of them. And they are friends of ours, and they had given us a couple other things like ride vehicles. And so they donated those to us, and we got them working again. And so people can come in and play Fascination. We have the 30 pinball machines.
Do these older machines break down quite a bit?
Quite a bit. So we do have a couple technicians that come in and work on them. The other challenge is like the pinball machines were not built for 4 or 5 year olds. So you get the kids on there with the flippers, and they keep like hammering, and that's not really good for the flippers, but it's kind of the learning process. Mm-hmm. So it's not good for the machines, but we love going in there and seeing, like, you know, a 5-year-old playing their first pinball machine, or older women playing the pinball machines. Because a lot of time when those older women were younger, the places they had the pinball machines were not considered necessarily appropriate for the women to be.
Really?
Like bars or
Okay.
things like that. So you also get some equally excited 80-year-old women that are in there playing pinball. It's like, wow, this is really cool. I wish I knew this when I was younger. So, yeah. But we do have a couple people that come out and fix the machines regularly, both a couple paid people and some volunteers that have helped keep us going over the years.
Do you ever have to modify the equipment for like
We frequently do. In fact, a lot of the penny arcade type things we have were made to put coins into. And by and large, any of them we could change to free play. We have done that.
Mm-hmm.
So you pay a door admission, and then with the exception of about 6 games, everything is on free play and included. We do have a few games we could not set on free play. So we actually have trays of pennies and nickels on tops of the games. And then we have about 5 games that actually take coins. Things like a fortune teller or a crane game or a rotary merchandiser where you can win like plush animals or buttons or things like that.
Now, are you the only magician there at Playland?
I am the magician that performs there most regularly now.
Okay.
We actually had about a half dozen magicians that would appear and disappear there pretty regularly. But life has caused them to move on. One of the magicians has a couple kids who've started having kids of their own. So he's very much in the grandpa mode. One of our magicians started performing at Playland when he was about 11 years old. His name's Magical Nathaniel. And he just graduated from UC Berkeley 2 years ago.
Wow.
And so he's actually making his living now as a magician.
That must be really neat to see people being like children introduced into magic and then seeing them grow up and then become magicians themselves.
Yes, it's very cool. And seeing the differences in it and what they've become. In fact, occasionally Nathaniel ends his show with this really nice manipulated card trick where he basically tears it into pieces and restores it. You're gonna make me cry here. And he always has a story that goes with it about his friend Richard, who he met when he was a kid, and kind of taught him how to do the magic. And sometimes things happen, and then he restores the card and says, "Here's to you, Richard. Thank you." And so it's very rewarding to have that both with the magicians and with the kids that come see the magic shows. To have them come back in later and talk about having seen magic there, and gotten into magic, or just seeing the magic shows there and what special memories they were.
Do you teach magic classes?
We do sometimes have magic classes. We've had magic classes or camps over the summers, occasionally over the winter break. We just decided we are going to be open for the full summer. And so we're looking at possibly having a magic camp or two this summer.
And what days are you open?
Right now we're open Mondays through, right now we're open weekends and the occasional school holiday like Memorial Day or Martin Luther King Day. We were just open this full past week because it was spring break in the local school district. And we are going to start being open every day of the week, I think June 11th.
Okay.
So we'll be open every day of the week through summer. We're planning on being open through Labor Day.
Okay. And you guys are located right on San Pablo Avenue.
Yeah,
and
beautiful downtown El Cerrito.
Yeah.
Almost across the street from Big Five Sporting Goods.
Yep.
About 5 blocks from BART. So we're pretty easy to get to. We do have parking. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually been there a couple times. Took my stepkids there about 4 years ago, and then also my girlfriend's cousin who has twins. They were 3 at the time when we took them, and they fell in love with it. They loved it. They had a blast there.
Very cool.
We were there for, I want to say, 2.5, 3 hours, and just all the different arcade games, and obviously the magic show. They really enjoyed.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, how do you go about teaching magic when you do these classes?
It depends a little bit on the kids. I mean, a lot of times I do not do the teaching of the magic myself. We'll have people like Magical Nathaniel come in and do the classes. Or I think we've had a camp there with Brian Scott, who's another local great magician. So they mostly do the teaching. But it depends a lot because one of the years or 2 of the years, we actually had 2 different magic camps. And one of them was for like 5 and 6-year-olds. And the other one was for like 12 to 60-year-olds. And we actually had a couple adults take the class with the kids. One of them was a teacher and wanted to learn a little more, things he could associate with the kids. The lower level camp is more an arts and crafts class with a little bit of magic thrown in.
Okay.
So like they learn how to make a paper bag where they can make things appear and disappear. But most of the time's on putting the thing together and then kind of presentation. And so some of it's actually teaching them the magic, and some is just a little bit of people skills and, getting up in front of people. What we usually do when we have the classes is it's usually a week long, either 2 days or 5 days. And then at the end of the week, if the kids want to perform for the other kids in the class and their parents, we have kind of like a open presentation. And if it happens to be a week where Playland's open, they can come in on that Friday or on a weekend and actually perform for an audience.
Okay.
So
That's pretty neat.
It's a lot of fun.
So if someone's learning the magic trick, what's usually the biggest challenge?
Believe it or not, one of the biggest challenges can sometimes be teaching kids it's okay to lie or to trick people. We've had a few kids where the challenge was they want to perform it, but they've been taught to be honest. And so they'll like put the thing in the bag and they'll say it disappeared, but then they have to tell people what's really there. So they want to give away the secrets and they don't want to trick people. So it's really wonderful to see them have that purity. And it's like, well, it's not bad that you're tricking them. It's part of the magic arena. So that can be one of the challenges.
Now, what about card tricks? Because I know card tricks tend to be very popular. What are some of the challenges in learning card tricks?
Some of the challenges for the kids can actually be the size of their hands. So sometimes we actually use bridge decks, which are a little bit smaller than the regular size deck, so they fit their hands better. One of the other challenges is a lot of kids don't often know the numbers and the suits in the decks of cards. So sometimes we'll use cards that have like cartoon characters or other things that look like playing cards, but they're a slight variation.
Okay. Now, so since you brought the deck of cards, now we have to ask, can you do a card trick real quick?
I could probably do a card trick really quick. I'll tell you what. Now, have we rehearsed this before?
We have not.
Okay, so you didn't know even I was bringing a deck of cards?
No, in fact, this is the first time I've met you, and this was not rehearsed.
Okay, so would you do me a favor? Would you give me a suit? Hearts, diamonds, clubs, or spades?
Hearts.
Hearts, okay. And would you mind doing me a favor? Would you pick a number from a deck of cards? 8. So apparently the card we have selected is the 8 of hearts.
Correct.
So here we have a deck of cards. We're going to take these out of the deck. We have all different cards in our deck of cards. Now the card we selected was the
8 of hearts.
8 of hearts. We appear to have one card upside down in the deck.
So for listeners, the entire deck is being spread out, and of course there's one card face down.
Okay, go ahead, take that card.
Okay.
And what card is that, please?
8 of hearts.
The 8 of hearts. Yes.
Wow.
Now, normally what I love to do in this is actually my closer for the show. And throughout the whole show, I like to, in addition to the magic, have fun with the kids. So one of the first things I'll do with the first illusion or two is explain to them that it's very important they don't give away the secret to magic. In fact, that's also one of the things in class is not giving away the secrets. So I'll tell them it's very important you don't give away the secret. So if anybody asks you how you did that, what I want you to tell them is that you did that very well. And frequently they'll get kind of a goofy grin, not unlike yours right now. And they're like, okay. And I'll say, let's test this. Does anybody have a question for Marc? Marc, how did you do that? And I did it very well. So at the end of the show, frequently I'll do that. And a lot of the people are kind of surprised by that, especially some of the adults who have not been impressed with, some of the hanky changes color and turns back. And it's like, do you want to know how I did that? I did that very well. In fact, about a month ago, I had a mom send me a video. Her son had a talent show at school, and he did magic during his show. And he totally took like one or two of the things I do in the show, including the whole bit about how did you do that? I did it very well. And to see this kid doing it at like, I don't know how old he is exactly, but like 8. And to see him doing that and remembering it, and what really made me tear up when I saw it, because it was like, I've touched his life somehow.
That's a pretty impressive trick. That just kind of blew my mind right there.
Now, I will share with you, the other challenge magicians face right now is this thing called the internet and Google. Because most of these things have a name. And if you call them by the name before your show's even over, they're sitting there Googling. It's like there's something called a Svengali deck. And if you say, here's a Svengali deck, you're going to have somebody in the second row who's Googling it. And by the end of the show, it's like, that's not magic. That's how this is done. And so, like this, I always say, when I bring up the person, I said, you have a pretend deck of cards. Because that's not the name of this illusion. But if I call it by the real name, they Google it and it's like, oh.
Yeah.
So.
But that destroys the complete fun around magic, though. Like, yeah, I could probably Google and see how that trick is done, but why would I? I mean, I don't want to, because that would just ruin the entire trick. Like, that's an amazing trick, and you made it look so simple and easy.
Well, thank you. Yeah, but that's, part of the nature of magic. You do have to teach people how to learn the magic, and, so that's why YouTube has both been a great tool for learning magic and a horrible purveyor of giving away the secrets, either because you've had people who've been trying to perform it after only trying it once or twice, and they basically accidentally give away how it's done, or they purposely give away how it's done. There's somebody out there right now, I don't remember the guy's name, who basically will string together like 12 tricks, and he'll perform it the way it should be performed. Then he has a stooge run up and give it away. And his whole shtick is performing it and then having it given away. So he ruins like 12 illusions at a time. And he's got tons of followers on YouTube.
Wow. Just giving out all the secrets?
Just giving out all the secrets.
Now, for the magicians that are on big stages, does that make the trick easier or harder to do?
I don't know. The issue I have with a lot of big stage magic is it's so big and overproduced. It's like I'll watch it and go, well, of course you could do that. You have $10 million. Siegfried and Roy were extraordinary entertainers. Were they great magicians? I don't know, because they stopped doing the smaller magic, and it was, we're going to make an elephant and 11 white tigers and everything else appear. There's a pretty famous quote in magic, which I wrote down because I never remember it, that basically talks about any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So, a lot of times the technology's there, and you just kind of look at the big stage illusions and go, yeah, it was cool. It's like when Copperfield made the Statue of Liberty disappear. Yeah. It's like, yeah, that looks really nice on TV. I don't know if that fits into my magic realm. I'm much more, the smaller audiences, the smaller interactions with the audience and the people like, oh, real magic.
Yeah, the guy I used to watch quite a bit growing up was David Blaine.
Okay.
And just him walking through the streets. And I don't know how much this was professionally produced, but on TV, it looked like a modern day vlog where someone would have their buddy basically just walk around with them, and he would do all these magic tricks, and especially the one where he would throw a deck of cards at a glass window, and the card that they chose was stuck on the other side of the window. I mean, that just blew everyone's mind.
Yeah, some of those things can look very cool.
Yeah.
And there's, some of the older school magicians have issues with some of the, Chris Angel, David Blaine, kind of newer, lots of mascara type of magicians. And I think they're great in that they're bringing other people's interest in magic to the forefront. So, yeah, and they do a lot of unconventional, like you said, the walking the streets, performing the magic, or arenas where you would usually see a magician. So I think they're wonderful.
Now, explain the mummies at Playland.
It's funny you ask about those. There was an old entertainer named P.T. Barnum who was known for, his museums and all this other stuff and being an entertainer. Sutro Baths used to have a couple authentic mummies that I now think are out at San Francisco State. The two mummies we have are actually in what's an old sarcophagus that was actually for sale at Smarter Image as a CD case. It looks like an Egyptian sarcophagus. And the two mummies we actually have in there are from a Halloween store. So they're not really authentic mummies. In fact, we usually refer to them as Princess Pity Potty and her baby Porta Potty. And it does come with I came up with an acronym for it today. I forget what I called it. Acoustic gas passing something device. Basically, because I didn't want to say fart machine on the podcast. But basically, it's got a Spencer's fart machine in it, and we show the kids the mummies, and then the baby has some diaper issues because, flatulence is great with the 12-year-old crowd. So it is kind of lowbrow humor, but it's kind of...
It makes them laugh.
It makes them laugh, and that's what we're about. And, and it's great to have, the 12-year-old kid like, Mom, come look at this. So, yeah, it's, are they authentic mummies? No. But it's the kind of thing you would see in old carnivals or sideshows or...
And something that you wouldn't expect for it to fart.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, out of all the things inside of Playland, what would probably be the most unique attraction there?
Well, the fascination tables are pretty special. One of the things we have that most people aren't expecting to find is the headquarters of the Eartha Kit fan club.
Okay.
So we are known as the happiest place on Eartha. A lot of people don't know who Eartha was, but she was a wonderful entertainer. She did cabaret, she sang, she was on TV, she was on Broadway, she was in movies, and she kept performing from when she was very young until she passed at 82. So it's not unusual to ask somebody, do you know who Eartha Kitt was? And they'll say no. And it's like, and then I bring them into my office, which is also the headquarters of the fan club. And it's like, she was Catwoman on the Batman TV show. She was the voice of Yzma in Emperor's New Groove and Emperor's New School. She recorded a little Christmas ditty in the 1950s called Santa Baby. And suddenly people are going, oh, of course I know who that is. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the more unusual things. But it did also give us the tagline of happiest place on Eartha. Again, love the dad jokes. So happiest place on Eartha is totally in my wheelhouse.
Now, you have a few of the machines that I find probably the most fun to play and also the most annoying to play, the claw machines.
Yes.
Okay. I love playing claw machines, but I also hate them because they always drop everything that I grab.
They frequently do that. And part of that is just the physics of the way the game was made. And possibly the sometimes people get a little greedy on what they want to get for the prize. It's like they don't want the cheesy little, ghost. They want the bigger thing in the back. And a lot of time those claws are dependent on the shape and texture of the item and how heavy it is. So if you're trying to pick the lighter items, you have a better shot. Mm-hmm. Also, a lot of times prizes in those games are packed very tightly. So your best bet is not deciding what prize you want, but which one looks the easiest to get, meaning maybe it's not packed as quietly or it's sitting on top or things like that. But it's funny because they are very difficult to win, which is why they're in a lot of places like restaurants. And frequently, if the adults, that isn't one of the few games that do take coins. And a lot of parents don't want to give the kids coins for that, and I think that's great. Occasionally, I'll give kids a couple quarters so they can try it, and I'll start to explain how they have them in restaurants because they're really hard to win, and then the kid will totally win on the first try. And it's like, well, there's my lesson shot to hell because, they're not impossible to win, but they are very difficult.
Yeah.
A lot of times they also do things to trick you. Like they'll have the lever to move the crane, but then they'll also have buttons like faster, slower, close the claw now. Most of the time, if you use those buttons, you're reducing your chances of winning the game.
Really?
Because your best bet is just line up the claw, let it fall naturally, let it close, and then you've got a better chance than trying to tell it when to close or when to fall.
I guess just keep it as simple as possible, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
The more buttons they add, the more chances. It's like a casino game, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So what are plans for Playland in the future?
That's kind of hard to say. As a lot of people know, our building has been sold. They are putting in condos, which ironically is what happened to the original Playland. The original Playland closed in 1972 for
Where was
condos.
that located?
It was located out at Ocean Beach in San Francisco, right near the Cliff House Restaurant and the ruins of the Sutro Baths. So that was a whole little entertainment area in the city. Developers are coming in. They're putting in apartments and condos. It's sad in a lot of ways because of all the development going on. I don't appreciate a lot of the development. But by the same token, the developers that bought our property have been incredibly generous to us. They did give us a big break on the rent because they knew how much the area loved us. Mm-hmm. And because we kind of told them, if you can give us a break on the rent, we can pretty much guarantee we'll be here until the day you bring the building down. So I don't want to badmouth them at all because they're just really nice people. But the whole development of the Bay Area is changing the flavor and the living density.
That's a common thing that's happening in every city.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So the building will likely be coming down before the end of the year. So we've basically decided we're going to try to be open through Labor Day. So we'll be open all summer, starting like the second week of June. So like 7 days a week, shorter hours Monday to Friday, longer hours on the weekends. Mm-hmm. And we'll still have our grown-up evenings twice a month. So we're hoping to get 3 or 4 really fun-filled months in there before we have to go away.
Yeah.
We are hoping to try to relocate.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, where do you have plans right now of relocating?
We don't have concrete plans because that can be really unpredictable. Our kind of guidelines are we're hoping to avoid going over a bridge mm-hmm. or through a tunnel to get where we're going. So mostly East Bay, ideally not over, the Bay Bridge or through the tunnel to Alameda or whatever. Mm-hmm. But we're looking locally. The biggest challenges are finding a space adequate and up to all the codes for like ADA compliancy and fire safety and mm-hmm. all that stuff. We figure we'll have to close for probably about a year, and it's probably $200,000 of rebuilding costs.
Oh my God.
Ironically, we have a wonderful hand-carved miniature circus. It's been appraised for quite a bit of money.
A hand-carved
miniature circus. It's 300,000 pieces. Wow. Recreates one day in the 1930s, what was called the Sells Floto Circus. It was carved by a local guy and his family. It's part of the Playland Not at the Beach games and things you can do there. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, it is kind of overlooked a bit. People will walk through there, they'll look at it, they'll go, that's nice, but they don't really appreciate it. Mm-hmm. We'd hate to lose it, but if we were able to find a buyer for that, because it is considered folk art, which is why it's been appraised at $200,000. If we were able to sell that, that would give us the money we need to relocate and rebuild. So then the trick will just be, finding an adequate space. And that's one of the reasons we're getting the word out to do that, is because, we could try to look at, a ton of places, but, we're anticipating there's going to be some angel out there who's got a building who, it's been vacant for a lot of years.
You'll have to talk to my business partners. They do commercial properties, and that's all they work with.
We should do that.
Yeah. So I'll put you in touch with them, and they can find you a place.
That would be amazingly cool.
Yeah, very cool. So the idea would be to relocate and establish again brand new. And if that were to happen, do you have any plans of finding a bigger place, maybe? Well, how big is
that could work.
How big is your place right now?
We're about 7,500 square feet. The reality of the costs of everything is we're thinking it'll end up having to downsize a little bit. So we're looking closer to like the 5,000 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can keep it at 7,500, or if we could expand it, you know, we definitely think we could make that work. Because like right now we have 30 pinball machines. They're very popular, so we could expand the pinball area. We could, you know, add a couple party rooms. Yeah.
Do you have a video arcade, like actual video machines?
We do have a handful of video game machines. We are more kind of the retro stuff. So we have like a video game that has 100 vintage arcade games on it. And it kills me to say vintage and arcade game in the same sentence. But it's like the old Pac-Man, Millipede, Centipede, Street Fighter, Crystal Castles, Galaxian, Galaxia. So a lot of the old school 80s kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We have another old Carnival King shooting game, which is one of the only shooting games we have because we don't want to get, you know, too much into that. But we purposely don't have a lot of the brand new video games and stuff because we want it to be more retro, throwback kind of.
And the throwback games are way better. Like you mentioned Pac-Man, right?
Pac-Man.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's one that I remember. And it's funny because you start looking at some of these games and right away all the memories just start coming back. And I remember I went camping with some cousins and we went camping for an entire week, and maybe at the clubhouse at the campgrounds they had a Pac-Man machine, and the entire week we literally spent day and night just playing this game, trying to beat our scores and just get better and better. And yeah, it was a great memory and a great game too.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny you mentioned that because it has Crystal Castles, which I used to play. It has the little bear you're trying to eat all the red jewels.
Yep.
And I hadn't played that in years. And right after I started playing the game, my mind suddenly went, there's a secret passage behind here. And suddenly it was back like 1980, and I was back, you know, playing this art in the arcade I used to play where I grew up, and it's like, I remember it was so cool when I learned about that secret passage, and it was so, yeah, it brings you back.
Yeah. Yeah, I recently, a couple weeks ago, went to, I believe it's called Stay Gold in Oakland, and they're a deli, and I went there because they had a special pig roast with a local winery. In fact, Tessier Wines, which I've had on the podcast before, they were doing an event, and they had a few tables that you could sit down, play Pac-Man, and eat. And I thought that was pretty neat. Just sit down, play arcade, and eat some food, drink some wine.
Yeah, and those cocktail tables, yeah, those also bring back a lot of memories.
Yeah.
I remember I used to go to a pizza place, and I think it was Galaxian and Pac-Man.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about Richard Tuck. Who is Richard Tuck?
You're going to make me cry again. Richard Tuck was basically kind of Peter Pan. When Richard was a kid, he used to have his birthday parties at Playland. When he grew up, he had been a teacher. He started a technology company that placed people in jobs in a very small specialty niche. But it made him a lot of money, which gave him the money to put together the things he enjoyed as a kid. So, like, for example, when he started getting money in, he remembered how much he enjoyed magic. So he bought a bunch of magic, and that's how he got into the magic again. And then via Richard, that's how I got into the magic again. Richard touched a lot of lives. We got involved with a one-ring circus that was having some trouble, and he basically helped the circus keep in business for about 10 years. He met people who were going through issues with their own lives and just kind of touched them and made them a little better. His AOL, if you remember AOL, which I usually still have, but that's a whole other story. His title on AOL was Happiness Facilitator. And we actually met a few people who happened across his title, and it's like, what was a happiness facilitator? So he was just a big kid. When we acquired the building, he decided part of it would always be used for fun because part of it was the job placement company, and we didn't need that much space. So we had the back portion, and he came up with the name Playland Not at the Beach totally by accident. And it started off kind of as just a quirk and something he did for fun when he wanted a little break from the job side of things. And we started with like 5 pinball machines and a jukebox. And it totally just grew into the entity that is Playland Not at the Beach. Yeah, so he was just pretty much Peter Pan. Yeah, and we miss him greatly.
And how long have you been there again?
I have been involved with it since before it started. I actually met Richard outside of the Playland and job placement thing, and was working in banking. And not long after I met Richard, basically ended up moving in with him. And we just became kind of best friends. And when I was in banking, he decided he wanted me to start helping him with his placement company. And he was like, okay, for the placement company, you know, we have to go here for a week, there for 5 days, here for 2 days. How much time do you get off at the bank? It's like, well, I get a week off. And he's like, how much do you make for supervising 8 people? And I told him, and he's like, you're quitting your job next week at the bank and you're coming to work for Lander, which was the placement company. And so I did that. And Richard had this great way of combining the fun and the business. So frequently when we traveled, we would speak to companies that needed employees and stuff during the day. But then in the evenings, we'd hit, you know, Dave & Buster's or amusement parks or Disneyland or whatever. In fact, at the trade shows we'd go to, we were always known as the fun company, because you'd go to the trade show as part of like the training events. And it's like, you know, this company would be giving away a set of training books, and this would be giving away, you know, a USB key, and we'd be giving away a CD jukebox or tickets for 2 people to go to Disneyland or Disney World. So we were known as the fun company. In fact, frequently, Richard would, when he had to meet with people to train them, instead of going to quiet places or, you know, wherever, we would go to like Disneyland, and he'd be coaching them while we were in line waiting for the rides on, you know, what they should do for interviews. And so he was a lot of fun.
So it sounds like he brought a lot of happiness and just a lot of different fun to.
He brought a lot of happiness. Yes. Although it was amazing because when he had to be, he could be in front of people. So like frequently he would put on panels, but that was part of his magic, was he would put the panels together and he would let those people shine. Or he would find people that needed something in their lives and he'd kind of get them going. And then he'd kind of step into the background and let them shine on their own. So, yeah.
Now, what kind of fundraising does Playland do? Do you do events right now for fundraising?
We have not been doing a lot of events for fundraising for us. We do have a GoFundMe page. And we are trying to get some publicity out there now because there was a lot of uncertainty. At one point, we were trying to actually purchase the building we're in. And that did not work out, which was why it was sold to this new development company. So now now that we have an idea of the timeline of, you know, it's going to be the end of the year and what things are looking like, we are trying to do some fundraising to see Playland be able to stand on its own.
Interesting. So the original Playland in San Francisco and then eventually moving to El Cerrito, I mean, it sounds like it's had a big impact for many residents in the Bay Area just over the many years. What's been the biggest impact on you as an individual?
The biggest impact on me, I've gotten to perform for a few celebrity-type people.
Very cool.
I actually had a magic show where I had the privilege of having a presidential candidate sleep through my magic show. And I say that tongue-in-cheek. He slept through it. He did. It was actually Kitty and Michael Dukakis.
Okay.
And you know, they were there with their grandkids. They were having a lot of fun. He happened to fall asleep in the middle of my magic, and you know what? I think that's totally cool because the fact is he was there with his grandkids and they were having fun. So the fact he slept through it, I don't have a problem with it all because it was about family time. Likewise, we had another instance where I know my staff pretty well, and I noticed at one of the events, they were kind of starting to whisper amongst themselves. And I was like, okay, there's something up. Let's find out what this is. And I would hear whispers like, shh, 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 Penny Arcade. Shh. And I'm like, okay, there's something going on. I have to check it out. And just as I was leaving my office, there was a gentleman standing there who looked at the Eartha kit stuff and said, oh, we knew Eartha. She was a friend of ours. And I kind of passed it off a little bit is like, okay, I'll get back to this. And I went into the kitchen or the Penny Arcade, and there was a woman standing there. And ironically, Richard had just walked up to her and recognized her. And I don't want to give away her name, but I'll just mention that she happens to be a Bay Area EGOT. So she's won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony.
Wow.
And I've seen interviews with her before where she's talked about one of the most important things in her life is her grandkids. And the fact she was there for her grandkids for a party, the fact I was able to be part of that, it means so much.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
Very neat. Now, one thing that we also want to discuss is the Relay for Life.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. So let's get into that. What's your participation? And in fact, let's first start. What is Relay for Life for some of the listeners or viewers that are not familiar with it?
Sure. Relay for Life is frequently it's a 24-hour event. It's basically 24 hours because people who have cancer deal with it 24 hours a day. It's put on by the American Cancer Society. In spite of the name Relay, it is not it's not a 5K, it's not a run. It's basically, the theory is you have different teams of people whose lives have been touched by cancer, and there should be one person from each team that's walking the track for the full 24 hours, and people trade off. So that way, people ask for donations and things. It's a great way to get Bay Area sponsors or people whose lives have been touched by cancer. So we have caregivers, we have survivors, we have, just all kinds of people. And so our event is actually August 11th in El Cerrito. I was voluntold. I don't know if you're familiar with that phrase. I learned it this past year. I was voluntold I was going to be in charge of it because cancer has touched my life quite a bit. I lost my mom and dad to cancer. Eartha, we lost to cancer. I'm a cancer survivor. My husband, Tim's a cancer survivor. So it's just touched my life a whole lot. And so our relay touches, I don't have the list memorized yet, 12 different communities. Albany, Berkeley, Crockett, El Cerrito, El Sobrante, Hercules, Kensington, Pinole, Port Costa, Richmond, Rodeo, and San Pablo.
Wow.
When I started with this, it was just El Cerrito, and that was about 7 years ago after Richard passed. I'm currently the event lead for this. So we're supposed to raise $50,000 this year.
Okay.
I shouldn't say we're supposed to. We're going to raise $50,000 this year. And so, yeah, it's a challenge, but it's, cancer takes a lot of people out of our lives. And the relay actually brings other people whose lives are touched by cancer into our lives. So it's just a great event. It gives support, it gives education, it gives training. There's an incredible event every evening called the Luminaria Ceremony, where they basically line the entire track. People have been walking with illuminated paper bags, and they've got the names of people, again, who we've lost to cancer, caregivers, supporters, survivors, and just seeing all those bags, knowing each one represents a life, is just incredibly moving. In fact, I actually proposed to my husband at one of the relay events right after the Luminaria ceremony because it was just such a special evening.
Mm-hmm. Now, the goal is to raise $50,000 at this event.
The goal is to raise $50,000.
Now, is this the only event for the year?
It is the only event for El Cerrito. I mean, there are hundreds of relay events throughout the nation and worldwide.
Okay. But of all the cities that you mentioned, so there's going to be one event in each city?
No, so this event is covering those 12 cities. Okay. They used to have a lot more small events.
Yeah, I did one like what we were talking about briefly before. I did one here in Pinole at the high school.
Yeah, and the problem was they had a lot of tiny events, and the problems were there were so many, you couldn't go to the pools of other people and businesses outside of your city. So, for example, if I lived in El Cerrito, I couldn't come up to Pinole to look for sponsors. So you could only work within your city, and so it became difficult because, like, El Cerrito is no huge metropolis.
Yeah.
So, for us to look for businesses to support us, El Cerrito is pretty darn tiny. So now with these 12 areas, we can reach out further and hopefully get some people. And we know, we are a far distance from Crockett and some of the other places. But if there are people there with whose lives have been touched by cancer, we would love to have them come in and be part of this and, spend that 24 hours or even just come for a couple hours and take part of the event.
So where's it going to be held at in El Cerrito?
It's at Cerrito Vista Park, which is on Mosier. Okay. So it's pretty close to central El Cerrito. Mm-hmm. It's a gorgeous location. It overlooks San Francisco. It's a really nice, quiet, serene park. So if people want to come out, they can just spend a couple hours or they can spend overnight. It's really nice overnight because it's kind of dark and very quiet, and there are noise ordinances. So we are, after 10 o'clock, it gets a little quiet, hopefully. But it's a really nice time to share with people and, see old friends and make new friends. And
great. So if someone's interested in the Relay for Life, where do they go to donate or to sign up?
They can Google Relay for Life East Shore, or they can check Playland Not at the Beach. We do have some links there, or they can contact me at Playland. We are having a kickoff event this coming Sunday, the 15th, I believe, tax day. And then we do have monthly meetings if people want to help put this together. We'd love to find some people to help bring in sponsors or donations, or if there's businesses in the area that want to be sponsors, there's a chance to get your name, on our T-shirt and in our marketing materials.
Okay.
In fact, we've been a sponsor for like the past. I've participated about 7 years. Playland's been a sponsor about 5 years, and one of the most rewarding things about Playland is seeing our name on the back of the shirts, knowing that we've been part of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, we'll go ahead and link it up in the description. We'll link up the website for Playland Not at the Beach. And what's the phone number for Playland if people want to call?
Best number to call is 510-232-4264. Extension 24 is Tim, or extension 16 is me. My name's Frank. It does say Lander on the phone system. That's a holdout from the old business we had. But that is the correct number, and they can touch base, let us know if they want to make some donations, if they want to join us, if they have questions about Playland or Relay. Yeah, we'd love to talk to people.
Perfect. I'll have to make a visit this summer.
That would be wonderful, yeah. In fact, one of the things I just did with the Relay, since I'm in charge of this, is we were supposed to have some news coverage this past week. And we had one of the local news reporters headed over, and she got redirected to Berkeley because it happened to be the day they found the car off Grizzly Peak.
Okay.
But the morning we were putting that together, I came up with this, I don't know where it came from. It just kind of hit me, and I went, you want to go to CVS before you go to work. So I went to CVS, and I got an electric clipper, and I just decided if anybody wants to come in with a $10,000 donation or more, they can shave my head on the spot, and we're going to have the clippers charged and ready. Perfect. So I would love to have somebody come in and It sounds crazy. It sounds like a lot of money. I'll bet there's somebody out there that can do it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you now, if it happens, I'm going to cry like a baby. But it's an important cause, and it's something I want to see succeed. And,
Okay.
and you know, the less cancer there is, the more birthdays people can celebrate.
So $10,000.
$10,000. We'll take the whole $50,000. But yeah, $10,000, and yeah, bring a camera, bring a news crew, bring a video, bring whatever. But yeah.
Okay, perfect. We'll link it up in the description, everything. And so, Frank, thanks for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you to our guest, Frank Biafore, for joining us today. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubman. And a big thank you to our sponsor, East Brother Beer Company, for providing us with today's beer tasting. For more information about today's beer and East Brother Beer Company, go to their website at www.eastbrotherbeer.com. And for more information on what I do as a property manager, visit my website at marcguzman.com. I really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.